Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will be comparing Mexico and the late 1700s France. Now, for those of you who know your history, in the late 1700s, France had a revolution in which the common people overthrew an absolute monarchy and Napoleon came into power. Now, first I will be talking about Louis XV and Louis XVI, as well as the debt they made for France. First, Louis XV. Louis XV was king over France before Louis XVI, and Louis XV built a grand palace called the Palace of Versailles, and then later moved the capital from Paris to Versailles. Now, to put it into perspective, this capital had a 200-acre garden, and its rooms were finely furnished in gold. Entered the 7-Year War, also known as the French-Indian War, if I'm correct. He lost that war. So first, he built a palace he could not afford. And then he entered a war and lost the war. That's a lot of debt facing Louis XVI, who didn't really help the matter, to be honest. In fact, he worsened it. First, he wasn't that fit to be a king. He was very undecisive, very weak-willed, and to be quite honest, he was a very fat slob. His father having lost the 7-Year War, he joined another war, the American Revolution. And though, to be honest, the United States, we would not be here if the French hadn't joined in and helped us, he still threw his country into even more debt. And the biggest problem was, he and the rest of the nobles did not pay a single cent. Which leads to my next topic, the three estates of France. First, you have the 1% of the population, the clergy in the Catholic Church in France. These guys were pretty wealthy, they were landowners, they didn't have to pay rent, and they didn't have to pay taxes. Then you have the second estate, the nobility, 2% of the population of France. These were extremely wealthy people, had to pay absolutely no taxes and absolutely no rent. Which leaves all the taxes and all the rent for 97% of the population of France, the third estate. This third estate was made from pretty much everybody else, from the well-educated to the merchants to the people who could hardly buy anything, to the impoverished. Now, it's not a... And just to add on top of it all, this third estate had almost no say in the government of France. The whole issue is these estates, each one was given only one vote. So they all got together in their respective estates. They all voted on whether to or to not to do this or to do that. And then they all put it up, which means that these two estates over here could easily outnumber the 97% of the population. That's 2 votes to 1, unfortunately. Now, onto the Mexican government. It is a little bit like France. Well, actually, quite a lot like France. First things first, 40% of the population is impoverished. Then another 40% of the population is middle class. That's 80% of the population that doesn't have the money they need. Then you have the upper class, which is super rich, the 20% of the population. And many people think that the government of Mexico isn't that rich, and it shows through their people. But in truth, they have enough money to fix their infrastructure. They have enough money to give these impoverished people the chance they need to climb out of their hole, to be able to make a job, make a family, have a living. Unfortunately, they don't do any of that. So, quite a lot like Louis XVI, the Mexican government is not helping the impoverished people, which, quite frankly, outnumbers them. That's quite a recipe for disaster, if you ask me, as shown by France. So there's the similarities between France and Mexico. A, Mexico is rich enough to help, but chooses not to. B, there's a high population of people that are impoverished or in the middle class. And finally, C, should Mexico change? That's up for you guys to decide. Should there be a revolution? That's up for you guys to decide. All I'm saying is in Mexico, they're acting quite a lot like late 1700s France.